Welcome to the Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies. This is the next evolutionary step for Phil Meets the Movies and the Dying Breed Movie Club. This new podcast will come along with a version that has plenty of visuals, so Facebook and YouTube viewers have something they can watch, while others can still get the same impact just listening to it as a podcast or on a CD. We hope you enjoy episode 2 of the Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies.
The Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies. With your host, Phil Congleton. Guest starring Mike Leeson, Chris Mitch, and Peter Fay. Special commentary by Corey Octus and Rich Shoemaker. Music by Garth Ivan. Directed and edited by Phil Congleton. Episode 2, The Marx Brothers. Operas, Horses, and Brain Donors.
Hello everyone, greetings from the Fay Mansion in Phoenixville, PA. My name is Phil Congleton. In honor of the fact that Chico Marx turns 125 years old on March 22nd, we thought it would be cool to talk about the Marx Brothers. I remembered a film I saw back in the early 90s starring John Turturro and produced by the Zucker Brothers called Brain Donors, which was a complete remake of the Marx Brothers classics A Night at the Opera and A Day at the Races. On top of that, in just the last few months, a trailer for the new Three Stooges movie, coming to theaters on April 13th, 2012, was released to the public. We thought it would be cool to analyze A Night at the Opera, A Day at the Races, and Brain Donors, and talk about the similarities between them and the 60-year cultural differences that each film had to deal with. We will then come full circle to current day and discuss how Brain Donors already changed real people into actual characters. This all happening 20 years before the release of the new Three Stooges film. We may even have time to refer to a few other films along the way to help with the discussion. First, let me introduce my guest. He is already one of our repeat guests, who is a stand-up comedian well on his way of making a name for himself, and an accomplished video editor, Mr. Mike Leeson.
Hello, Phil.
My next guest is the guy who inspired us to do this kind of audio podcast, thanks to his own ingenious audio blog series entitled Digging Star Wars, now entering its 3rd season, and he is an accomplished video writer, director, producer of such short films as Terrible Twos and Bathroom Boardroom, Mr. Chris Mitch.
Hi, Phil.
I'm so glad we finally got you to join us.
I know. I owe you a lot of guesting, I guess.
Digging Star Wars.
Finally, it's only the second one.
I know.
You know how long I've waited for this moment.
I didn't think Bathroom Boardroom was that short.
And finally, my third guest. He is an accomplished TV producer and knowledgeable music connoisseur. And he is just as knowledgeable with the Marx Brothers, Mr. Peter Fay.
Thank you, Phil.
So how is everybody?
We're good.
Good.
We're ready to go. Let's start talking.
What'd you think about the Oscars and Billy Crystal?
Pretty standard.
Really?
Safe. I didn't have a problem with
That's what I
Billy
thought.
Crystal as a host. He was fine. But, I mean, I didn't think he was particularly memorable either. But it wasn't awful, so...
Oh, I don't mind Billy Crystal. I like him. I think it was, safe's a good word. It wasn't unfamiliar territory, and it was a little expected. But knowing that they did it all on short notice, they did a pretty good job. And I actually thought he got a couple good laughs in the course of the show that were maybe a little more impromptu than some of the set pieces. So
Yeah.
I think it was funny too because they really were hammering that go to the movies theme, but it was schizophrenic how they handled it. Like they didn't know whether they should do that in Cirque du Soleil or girls in cheesy outfits handing out popcorn to celebrities or short films with Billy, and it just was odd. And I think the ironies, and I believe you mentioned this in your first podcast, was you're commenting how was it Billy Crystal did the bit with the old Bob Hope tape segment. Yeah.
And it was, I think, the only good part of last year's Oscars.
I'm reading right now My Life in Jokes by Bob Hope, and it goes through his life chronologically, through history, and the jokes he wrote at the time. and he commented a lot about that first Oscars, which I think is what's referenced in that. Hope said stuff like television, that's where movies go to die. And asking television to host the Academy Awards is like asking a tiger to babysit your kids. Like, it's just got to be the death of this industry, and here we are decades later, and they're still trying to figure out how to save the industry.
I just think it's hilarious that all of a sudden in 2012 people are talking about a silent movie, and yet when you try to sit people, especially young people, in front of a silent film, they don't want nothing to do with it.
I think the reason something like The Artist got the acclaim it did and the attention it did was it's a silent film in 2012 is a novelty. And it's not truly a silent film. Like, there's a score attached with the film. It's not like you're sitting in a theater and there's someone live at an organ playing along. Not that they could facilitate something like that today, but I saw The Artist and I loved it. I was rooting for it to win Best Picture. I'm glad it won Best Picture. I can see why people were disappointed that Hugo didn't win. I think it was very interesting that it was an even spread between those two films because, again, they're both films that look backwards. A lot of the film, like Midnight in Paris, that film's, banks on nostalgia and banks on wanting to be part of a previous era.
Well, thank you very much, Corey, for giving us an update of what you thought. What did you think about the Oscars since we last spoke in episode 1?
I had a hard time watching the Oscars this year, and I think one of the biggest reasons was I didn't really have a horse in the race. There wasn't a movie that I thought, yes, this movie touched me. I really want this to win. I didn't feel like I was backing anybody, so it's like watching this year's Super Bowl. I didn't care. I kind of wanted both teams to lose.
Yeah.
So watching the Oscars, I'm like, yeah, Hugo, yeah, it's good. Was that even nominated for Best Picture? I really wanted, if Eddie Murphy were hosting, I think it would have been a different story for me because I think he would have been unpredictable. I think he would have been more comically sarcastic and bitter to the crowd rather than Billy Crystal, who was exactly what I thought he was going to be. He was angry old man, and he himself is starting to look more and more like Miracle Max without the makeup. It's freaking me out a little bit.
That's true. I was thinking about that too. He's a little bit puffy, isn't he?
Yes, he's getting puffy. Not that we all get old.
Yeah.
It's just
I should talk.
Yeah, I'm feeling puffy.
Yeah.
I want Hugh Jackman to host it again. That was awesome.
Wow, that was awful.
That opening number was brilliant. I mean, the host isn't even in it for much. He introduces one or two categories, but then it's like all presenters. And
yeah.
So, I mean, he's only in it for a little bit. Plus a guy that I grew up with, I went to high school with, wrote that opening number.
Yeah, you're
and
biased.
He jumps up at the end and he goes, "I am Wolverine." in like a Broadway musical, he screams, "I am Wolverine." That is
great.
Fantastic. Did you see any of the Entertainment Weekly that was ahead of the Oscars promoting it?
I read a little bit about it.
Yeah. Well, just looking at the cover, it was Billy Crystal leaning up against a giant Oscar statue, and the caption was "Making the Oscars Shine Again." And I think people remember Billy Crystal's hosting being way better than it actually was.
Yeah.
It seems to me like the Oscars, the people who are making movies that are nominated every year, feels like they're making a movie to win an Oscar. It doesn't feel like they're trying to tell a story. It's almost like they're showing off and trying to beat each other out to win an Oscar.
Yep.
It's like, let's make it the most dramatic, and it's not like the idea of The Artist was such a great original idea. I mean,
And I love how all these movies seem to come out in the fall and winter, too.
Oh yeah. They don't want you to forget about them.
Yeah.
They want to come out so close to Oscar nomination time that you don't forget about it.
And yet you ask about 75% of the people, and they never heard of them anyway.
Yeah, and I don't think the Oscars should have as much clout as they do being broadcast, because the Academy that is nominating them and the choices that they're making do not reflect society's choices. Now, granted, I don't think we should do that, because Larry the Cable Guy's next movie would be nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I just look at the Oscars as being just a big party to go to every year.
Yes, it's more. like people who aren't into sports are gonna watch the Super Bowl because everybody else is doing it.
Exactly.
And you know what? I watch it for the commercials. Shut the hell up! You watch it for the commercials. I mean, really?
So leave the viewership to everyone else, but let the Academy pick the movies because we're going to be dealing with Larry the Cable Guy if we don't.
Yes, I mean, but that extremely loud and incredibly close and really boring and predictable movie, is that the full title? I'm not
I don't
sure.
know.
I know that.
I'm very bad with the movies this year. I
I'm
feel
bad with the
horrible
movie
about
titles. But I didn't even say what I thought of Billy Crystal that much.
it. You did. We made fun of how puffy he was.
Yeah, he was puffy. He was puffy and angry.
Hey, Rich.
Hi, Phil. I wanted to say thanks for letting me participate in the blog.
So, being as you were here for our last podcast and we spoke about Billy Crystal and the Oscars, what do you think now since the Oscars have been televised?
I thought that Billy Crystal did a really good job at the Oscars this year.
Yeah.
He did some interesting things. It wasn't over the top, it wasn't crazy, but I did enjoy all the bits and all the different things that happened on the show itself. It was kind of funny too, the Oprah tie-ins everywhere. Oprah seemed to be tied into the Oscars, into the Jimmy Kimmel show, and pretty much into everywhere, which was kind of comical since Oprah's typically been one of those people that is hard to capture on television. Except for, obviously, her own show. I'm not sure if this is true or not, but no Saturday Night Live player has ever won an Oscar.
Really?
It is against the rules to take pictures inside the Kodak Theater.
No way.
If you take pictures inside the Kodak Theater, they are actually owned by ABC.
What else you got?
The backstage at the Oscars, as they always say, hey, we're backstage at the Oscars, doesn't really exist. This is another trivia fact. The backstage of the Oscars is actually at the hotel across the way. Even though I didn't get a chance to see the artist, I still found it amazing that in America in 2012, people would go and they would see a black and white film and really, really enjoy it. A movie that I got to see in the theaters that I really enjoyed in the Best Picture category was Hugo.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of talk about Hugo.
I was just blown away by that film. I saw it in 3D, and I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was.
Yeah.
I'm very glad that I saw it in 3D and in the theaters. I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much in 2D at home. I mean, it's an amazing film, period. But there's something about the 3D of Hugo that just took it over the top for me.
Yeah.
I was actually not completely surprised that Meryl Streep won because she's been nominated so many times. I haven't seen The Iron Lady, so I can't say that, oh, that was the best performance I've ever seen. I just know that Meryl is incredible in whatever she does. So the fact that she won over Viola Davis actually surprised me a little bit because Viola had done such a good job. And I was not surprised by the artist for the leading role. And I totally expected the artist to win just because it was so different. And it's a shame because obviously you put two big Hollywood stars next to each other. You put Clooney next to Pitt, and then Jean Desjardins comes along and wins it. So it's pretty. I wasn't too surprised. I was actually really happy that Jonah Hill got nominated at all.
Cool.
Just because it's it's funny to see the guy from I do believe it was Superbad. I always get the names of movies wrong, but to see him nominated, especially since I did get a chance to see Moneyball, I really enjoyed the movie itself. So it was kind of funny to have him nominated. I wasn't expecting him to win. And as far as the supporting roles go,
wow, you did your homework.
Octavia Spencer was awesome in The Help. I really enjoyed that performance. There were so many good things about it. And again, I was shocked and amazed that Melissa McCarthy got nominated just because it's a comedy. Comedies aren't often nominated and seldom win. And so that didn't surprise me that she didn't win. The categories, if you want a higher chance of winning, the categories you have to get into are the ones that only have 2 and 3 and 4. And so music this year for the original song had 2.
Yeah.
It only had 2.
Yeah, I've actually heard a lot of complaining about the Oscar nominations for music.
It had Man or Muppet from the Muppets, music and lyric by Brett McKenzie, who won actually. And the other song was Real in Rio from Rio. So I guess what I'm saying here is pick a category where there's not a lot of people if you want to win an Oscar like immediately. So one of the things that I wanted to discuss was my favorite film in recent years is a film that got remade in America, and that film would be The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Wow.
Now, I've read the books, I've seen the movies, all of them, and I really enjoy The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I was blown away by what I saw and what I heard.
Daniel Craig.
Now, the American version, I don't enjoy as much. It has a different feel that I can't really explain. It wasn't changed that much. It was just changed enough, though, that it didn't have the right feel for me. But as far as film editing goes, The Girl with Dragon Tattoo won, and I think it's well deserved. That movie, the pacing, the way that it went, unbelievably awesome.
Wow.
The one thing that I always find amazing about the technical awards,
Wow. He even did the technical
are
award.
the people that do the hosting of that show. It's typically an actress who's gorgeous. Mila Jovovich did it this year. She's gorgeous. She hasn't been nominated for many Academy Awards, but having her host the technical awards, I think, is pure genius.
My parents and I really enjoyed watching the movies on Sunday afternoon on like the local syndicated channels around here. So I saw probably all the Marx Brothers movies by the time I was 10, you know. In the late 70s, my parents bought me a Super 8 movie projector. So you would
Really?
get
When they were that old?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey now.
That's
Hey, I stole that from Billy Crystal.
Oh, really? Very good.
Really? Is that old?
Yeah. Sorry, Phil.
No, it's okay. I am an old person, definitely.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
He says there's nothing wrong with that, Phil.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't hear you. They always gave out these Super 8 movies, and they were the movies, but they were like 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Some were silent, some were in black and white. You know,
That's awesome.
they would just take the best parts of it and condense it into like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and just make the whole movie out of that. Like
The YouTube of their day.
Yeah.
I had 20 minutes of duck soup. I had an 8-minute horse feathers, but they called it I think pigskin capers, I think was the name of it. It was like an 8-minute. It was mostly the football game from horse feathers, and a couple others. So I have a rich history with the Marx Brothers. I watched all their stuff. I've seen all their movies on average, 3-4 times each. And I was a huge fan. But
I mean, you and I are about the same age. I remember being a kid, and there was a time, there was something to do with the legality of who owned Animal Crackers or whatever, and Animal Crackers went out into theatrical release when I was about maybe 9 or 10.
mm-hmm.
And it was a big deal. I mean, it did really well in New York, and I know Groucho went to the opening, and I remember going to see. My dad took me to see that. I remember he got all the cousins and the brothers went, and we went to see that, and that was pretty cool. But then my other movie experience with seeing these films was my being a little older, maybe 11 or so, and being taken down to University of Pennsylvania for a double feature, which was Day at the Races and The Night at the Opera.
Oh, cool!
So
Wow.
Wow.
Doubly cool, because here I am with all these college kids watching this thing, and
And you're watching it on a real screen.
it was probably I'm pretty sure it was a 16 millimeter print, but it was
Still, it was the whole film
yeah,
too.
it was great.
So, from what we've been able to put together here, Mike and Chris, they don't know the Marx Brothers as well as
Well,
Pete and I do.
I'd seen them on same stations you were just talking
Yeah.
about. I'll be honest with you, prior to getting ready for this podcast, I may have seen one in its completion, one of the films, most likely Night at the Opera. I have nothing against the Three Stooges. I enjoy the Three Stooges, but if someone asked me who would you prefer, the Three Stooges or Marx Brothers, I would definitely say the Marx Brothers. I think I just like the content more, and the dialogue in the Marx Brothers certainly is fast and quick and witty, but there's the physical stuff, and they're still doing the vaudevillian gags, and they're putting the pretty girls in front of the camera, and all that goes with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a Buster Keaton guy, so I really appreciate the similarities between Keaton's work and Marx Brothers' work.
Mm-hmm.
And what I loved, to Peter's point, like with his dad taking him to see him, is that you were lending me these films, and I made every film I sat and watched in preparation for this podcast. I watched with my 11-year-old son and 9-year-old son, and they quickly became addicted. So that's really cool. That just goes to show you how well done these movies are. They're still standing the test of time.
Well, Duck Soup and The Night at the Opera both are on the AFI Top 100 of all time. So
Really?
Yeah.
This brings up an interesting point, because I was not familiar with the Marx Brothers. I mean, I'm familiar with them, but I had never really watched any of their movies. I'm a huge fan of comedy, but I think, because I watched the Marx Brothers for the first time for this, I came to them a little too late, and I.
What do you mean by too late? Like your age?
No, just with all the comedy I've seen.
Oh, right, okay.
I realized that they were probably the foundation for a lot of things, but I can't see through
at least brain donors
the datedness of what they are.
Well, you did.
So,
what a segue.
I'm not that.
You did mention a little while back that Groucho Marx. You were starting to not like Groucho Marx already.
As a character, I mean, we can get into that. I mean, there are a few reasons why. Like, I appreciate some of the comedy of these. I don't have the sort of nostalgia that you guys have. So I mean, I'm looking at these from a different vantage
No,
point,
you're right.
I see a lack of a good story, a story that doesn't, scenes that don't play well into the next scene because they're just set piece. Great shorts. I can see how it would be an awesome 10-minute film on the side of your garage, but it doesn't necessarily have to go into the next bit.
Well, being not to put you on the spot, but since you are like our comedy guy, all right, are there any comedies from the era that these films were out where you're like, that's a better comedy film from
No.
years?
I don't have anything for you for there. So I mean, I respect how good their comedy is for when it is, but it's the type of thing where it's like.
Well, it's
it all feels instantly dated, and I feel like that's how you feel about musicals.
No, I just don't get them.
If you had been exposed to some of these films at age 10, at age 12, when you're being raised properly and you must respect your elders and this and that, and here's all these guys that are doing all this crazy stuff, might you have felt different about it? Or
probably, and
Actually,
especially because at that age I wouldn't have seen as much as I've seen now. But I've seen so much comedy in my lifetime that all is after these movies.
It's not necessarily the chronology of the films in film history. It's your exposure to them.
Yes,
that's why everyone should watch episode 4 first, right, Chris Mitch?
Absolutely.
All right.
See, I would agree with that.
Absolutely.
I think that.
And Phil, do you so loathe musicals that you can't...
I don't loathe musicals. I just don't get them.
All right. Would you? So do you at least appreciate the
The
artistry of it, the filmmaking of it?
Yeah, like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
That's crap.
I was impressed by the artistry and the stage and the backdrops and all that. What I'm trying to get to though is some people would get turned off by the Marx Brothers because of the musical interlude. But I didn't.
Well, it was a nice musical piece in A Night at the Opera, as far as like
and music is at least kind of central to the premise of Night at the Opera.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is that the comedy intertwines with the music at Night at the Opera.
I don't see it as a real break from what they were doing.
And just so you know, you got off easy because in the earlier Paramount
threatening me.
In the earlier Paramount films,
I don't know how I feel about this podcast.
It's interesting. Mike, we're not fighting. Everything is fine. In the earlier Paramount films, there's a lot more music than the later MGMs, I noticed. At They Ate the Races, the first musical number doesn't even happen until 41 minutes into the film, which I thought was very interesting because in the earlier films, there's a lot of music going on. But in the MGM ones, which started with A Night at the Opera, they pulled back on that. And I was wondering if maybe there was a reason for that, if maybe the audiences were getting sick of musicals by then because the Marx Brothers had really toned it back.
Well, there's also a huge difference in what the relationship with the studio they were working with too.
Yeah,
so that needs to be said as well.
The Marx Brothers started as Groucho, Harpo, Chico, and Zeppo.
Chico.
And Gummo.
And Gummo, who was the brother who didn't do anything. When we
Wait, is that true? I mean,
yeah,
all this,
yeah.
He was never in any film.
just
Yeah, but
sounds
like,
bad.
yeah, it was a large fan.
Yeah, it was.
I'm only aware of the 5 nicknames.
Yeah, I think there were only the 5 brothers. That's another thing I got to clear up. I have a big problem saying Chico. I don't know why.
Is that how you say it?
It's Chico.
That's how they said it.
Apparently, the story is that Chico used to chase all the chicks back in the day, so they called him Chico.
When Harpo played the harp?
Yes. Their first movie in 1929 was The Coconuts. And I just want to emphasize how old these guys were when their first movie debuted. Chico was 43, Harpo was 41, and Groucho was already 39. So these guys are already not spring chickens. So then we move forward to 1931, and the boys do this film called Monkey Business. And the reason I wanted to bring this one up is because half of the movie takes place on an ocean liner. And they took from that a lot of stuff that they brought in for A Night at the Opera for the ocean liner scenes. And, people check out Monkey Business. It's one of their funniest.
And pay attention in the beginning. It's the only time you'll ever hear Harpo on screen.
Oh, it's in Monkey Business.
In the opening titles, he's harmonizing.
Yes. And one of the things I always loved about the Marx Brothers is they seemed like they were always ahead of their time. And they were very political, and they did a lot of this very they were almost considered mature, I would say, sophisticated, smart kind of comedy.
Well, the beautiful thing about how they were doing the comedy, and I'm sure it was due to the strict censorship that they had in those days of what they could say, what innuendos they could use and couldn't use, is I feel like it always goes back to Bugs Bunny. It's that's like when you're watching a Bugs Bunny cartoon as a kid, and then you watch it 20 or 30 years later. You have that luxury in life, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're talking about this, or they're hinting towards that, and that's what's cool about it. So I know, sitting there watching these films with my boys, that they're going to appreciate a certain level, and then, just like myself, 20, 30 years later, they're going to appreciate on another level, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
It's a gift that keeps on giving, to use a cliche.
The thing I'm trying to get to is the Marx Brothers movies could almost be considered the R-rated film of 1935.
I could see that in some cases.
Like, especially in A Night at the Opera, where Harpo was running up there and ripping the stuff off the girl and a few other things.
Yeah, there was a low-angle shot at one point that I was like, that was pretty...
Raciness going on.
Was it Night at the Opera where they eat the spaghetti on the ship, and then there's the dance sequence, there's a lot like up the skirts.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and also...
They were very racy.
What was Duck Soup? The girl in Duck Soup's falling out of her dress through half of that, and they could not have her leaning over.
This is a great segue, Chris, because I want to go into Duck Soup.
Okay.
But we get to Duck Soup in 1933, and Zeppo decides he wants out. He's like, I'm tired of being the straight guy. I'm tired of being the guy that isn't funny. Which I never understood why he had a problem with that, because he was always the guy that got the girls. He was always the guy that won in fights.
But if you read any of the books, like Harpo's book, by all accounts, Zeppo very well might have been the funniest Marx Brother.
Yes,
but
yes.
just never on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
I've seen interviews
They all
where
said
they
he
say
was
he was the
hysterical.
funniest one.
Because he does not come across
he's
that
playing
way.
a role.
Yeah,
He's playing a role.
he just had they had to make him the straight guy. So and that's how it worked
And
out.
I guess he was the only one of them was sort of acceptably considered decent looking.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, they had been let go of their previous contract, and they sort of Chico, I guess, in a card game got
Yeah.
to Mr. Thalberg, and they hit it off, and so he kind of impressed upon them, like, yeah, you've made these films, and even Groucho would say, like, yeah, the films aren't that great, and Thalberg wanted to make a more of an A-list type production, so with better talent, story, songs, production numbers, and all those are in there, that's for sure. So the premise of the film, I guess, is Groucho is a man who is trying to get Margaret Dumont into high society by spending her money and simultaneously getting her money, I guess. And revolves around an opera singer, and the opera singer's girlfriend is Kitty Carlisle.
Alan Jones was Ricardo.
Alan Jones, sure.
Alan Jones, who's in a million things.
Right, but Alan Jones also here having what previously would have been the Zeppo role.
Yes.
Zeppo
left
to become Uber agent. Well, what can I tell? I can tell you that Kitty Carlisle did her own singing in the film. There's some really classic set pieces in that film that are kind of, almost iconic Marx Brother pieces. The contract scene.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, they are on the ship. There's the stateroom scene is
the stateroom scene.
I think that's the kind of scene that even if people don't know the Marx Brothers, you might know that a little bit.
They say Buster Keaton helped choreograph a lot of that scene.
Because he's the man.
Because in his 1928 film, The Cameraman, there's a scene where he's sharing a changing room with another guy, and they're doing the same kind of rolling around and shtick and all that. But A Night at the Opera is a fantastic movie. It's just great. It's hilarious. It's entertaining.
It's my favorite out of all the movies we've watched. And I think Night at the Opera, to Peter's point, has all those things going for him. It's got them doing their best gags. It's got great writing. The music makes sense. As a matter of fact, the gag with the orchestra where they change the sheet music, and you see, to your point, it's definitely a dated humor because they have to build up this gag and you know where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
But again, my sons were giggling at the thought of them doing the sheet music alone.
Mm-hmm.
They thought that was so funny that they were messing with the sheet music, and then when it actually happens, they were in stitches. They were absolutely in stitches.
Mm-hmm.
And
what about you? Are you laughing your...
Oh, no, yeah, no, I was. I really like Night of the Opera, and I was laughing out loud.
You mentioned Groucho's first appearance in the beginning of A Night at the Opera. I just think that's a fantastic entrance because Margaret Dumont's at the table in front of them, and she's talking to someone else, and you don't even realize he's behind her, and then all of a sudden he gets up and there he is,
right.
and it's like, bam, we're right into it. I'm going to go A-. I think
the dog hated it.
Wait, as an experienced member of the Dying Breed
veteran
cast.
Yeah, he is the vet.
Seasoned veteran.
He is the vet now.
I have to say that I'm coming to the Marx Brothers very, very, very late. I don't come with all the nostalgia, so I enjoyed this movie on some level. I didn't love it. I didn't laugh out loud or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will give A Night at the Opera a B.
Cool. I'm impressed by that. That's actually higher than I thought you would.
And that's mainly because of an appreciation of what it is. Like Chris was saying, like so many of these bits are bits that you see later on.
Yes.
In other
just
things.
the historical.
So you have to respect the fact that wow, that must have been pretty funny when they came up with it.
Mm-hmm.
I give this movie an A, and because of the positive, experience I had just watching it with my sons. I think I also, outside of just watching a movie with my sons, I also think it's just a funny movie. It's well written. It makes sense. Having compared 4 other Marx Brothers movies up against it, I think it's definitely the tightest. And I like the fact that it's referenced in other things. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, Mike, you can hit me. I like the fact that it inspired brain donors. I like the fact that there was a bunch of people sitting around thinking, we need to...
I think that's a strike against it.
No, it just...
I love the criticism of my son.
No, but just saying, there was a bunch of people that thought, let's take a crack at creating a movie in the style of...
And we are talking about the Zucker Brothers. I mean, come on.
Well, I for sentimental reasons, for reasons that Chris sort of cited, I think it's a pretty solid film in terms of the Marx Brothers, and I'd say it's an A too. I mean, I have a lot that I like about this film.
And 2 hard-boiled eggs. And 2 hard-boiled eggs. Make that 3 hard-boiled eggs. And 1 duck egg.
Also, check out these film appreciation, criticism, discussion sites out too.
Digging Star Wars, the online journal of the films that inspired George Lucas to create the Star Wars saga. Please look for our next episode on diggingstarwars.blogspot.com. With that in mind, think, post, and accept my thanks for listening.
And check out ComedyFilmNerds.com with comedians Chris Mancini and Graham Elwood, and featuring Nia Weekly as the kitten hands loving average moviegoer at ComedyFilmNerds.com. We moved to 1937. The Marx Brothers had their big debut with The Night at the Opera. Well, now they come out with their second film with MGM called A Day at the Races.
The thing about Day at the Races is it's going to be hard for me to describe the plot, because watching this film, I was also trying to figure out what the plot was. As I was watching it, it seemed like a lot of gags strung together loosely. But basically, Groucho Marx's character is named Hugo Z. Hackenbush. His character was originally named Quackenbush, but apparently there was a Dr. Quackenbush of that day, and they were afraid of a lawsuit, so they changed it to Hackenbush. But anyway, Hackenbush, Groucho Marx's character, is a veterinarian, and there's a sanitarium where Chico and Harpo, I don't know the character's name off the top of my head, but they work there, and there is a lovely lady, the leading lady.
Marina Sullivan, yeah.
Okay.
Judy
Standish is her character's name.
Yeah, she owns the crazy place.
Right. And
the sanatorium.
Apparently that's falling into hard financial times.
Sanatorium? How do you say that?
Crazy place.
Crazy place, yeah.
Sanitarium, yeah. And at the insistence of her most important patient, the rich Mrs. Upjohn.
That's Margaret Dumont.
Right. Insists on being treated only by Dr. Hackenbush.
Mm-hmm.
The sanitarium has fallen on hard times, and banker J.D. Morgan is attempting to gain control of it. Judy hopes that Mrs. Upjohn will make a large donation and stop that from happening. This is where it gets convoluted. Meanwhile, Judy's boyfriend, singer Jill Stewart, played by Alan Jones, has taken his life savings and bought a horse with it instead of paying for vocal lessons to further his career as a radio singer. Thank you. His hope is that the horse, named Hi-Hat, will win a big race and the money will save the sanitarium. Unfortunately, he now has no money to pay for the horse's feed, and he and Tony, played by Chico, who work at the sanitarium, and Snuffy, played by Harpo, Hi-Hat's jockey, have to resort to trickery to fend off the sheriff, Robert Middlemas, played by Robert Middlemas. Mm-hmm. Why is the sheriff after them? I don't know. After watching, I still don't know why the sheriff's after him.
Why was the sheriff after him?
So I was wondering the same thing. In the
because Groucho's faking being a doctor. That's why.
No, he's after them with the horse. He's constantly harassing them about the horse.
Oh,
and I don't get that at all.
I was under the impression that they were chasing Groucho because he was impersonating a doctor.
No, the other doctor. They have another psychiatrist.
Isn't he trying to serve the the papers to?
I don't know. I don't. It's not very clear. Tony raises some money by scamming Hackenbush into the Tootsie Fruitsy ice cream scene.
Get that Tootsie Fruitsy ice cream.
All right, first overall impression. This is not Night at the Opera. Night at the Opera is tight, it's well written, and it's funny, and the music makes sense, and the numbers make sense. Sure, there's some places where it drags, but it's good. Mm-hmm. This film, I'm not saying this film's horrible, but this film doesn't have the consistency and the structure that I wanted it to have. During production, Irving Thalberg, who had brought the Marx Brothers to MGM, died suddenly of pneumonia at the age of 37. Mm-hmm. It is generally believed that after Thalberg's death, the studio never gave proper care to the Marx Brothers, and that's why the movies got weaker. But that was interesting. It's kind of sad that that's the note of importance to this movie. Mm-hmm. Thalberg dies. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting about Day at the Races, two things. To Peter's point, yes, them out in the real world seemed weird and weak. To your point, all God's children got rhythm. That number was very surreal. And you're sitting there and you're watching this, and I'm trying to determine, is this appropriate or not? Is it of the era? Is it race? Like, all these thoughts were going through my head watching this movie, and how these characters were represented. Like, the Marx Brothers are these down like crazy white guys, and they're hanging out in this African American community, which of course are ostracized and living in the barn. But you're watching this stuff, and the dance is so freaking amazing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's such a well choreographed number, and it's very amazing. Mm-hmm. And the music, give or take, they play with it. So in researching it, Wikipedia mentions briefly, the film also features a Lindy Hop dance sequence set to the tune of All God's Children Got Rhythm. The dance sequence was nominated for the short-lived Academy Award for Best Dance Direction. Musical. So it had this huge musical element, And it was nominated for. I think it's funny that there was an Academy Award for that. Well, Herbert Whitey White, who is the guy who founded this dance troupe, he started this Savoy Ballroom Swing Dancers in 1935, and that program was designed to take inner city African American kids, youngsters, and introduce them to dance as a way of keeping them off the streets and exposing them to culture. It was more like an inner city project, but they were so good. They went on tour and they started selling tickets like you couldn't.
Wow!
It just took off, and they became the standard for this is how swing dance is done in its era, and it was a huge coup for them to get this dance troupe to perform in a Marx Brothers. You think it would be the other way around?
Yeah.
These young kids should be grateful they're in a Marx Brothers.
Yeah.
It really was the other way around.
Yeah.
It was a smart marketing ploy because if you knew these dancers were in it and you couldn't get tickets to see them live, well, you could go see them at the cinema, and it was almost the next best thing. And when you watch that dance sequence, it is freaking amazing. Like I couldn't believe it, and it felt. To our kind of point about talking about musicals, it felt a little odd. Like, is this forced? Is it weird? But now, like, knowing that history, well, of course they're going to spend the 15 minutes on that sequence to really take advantage of having them. And
that's the best part of the movie, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like,
it's
where's this
musical
coming
part.
from? Why is this coming from here? And I don't know if it's this movie or I think it's actually, what's the Duck Soup, where, Groucho used the term darky and all this other stuff. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on in there. And this film, when you're watching these films, you kind of get like the 21st century political correctness coming out. And to your point, like, you need to research when the film came out and what the perspective was. And then in learning about that dance troupe, I thought, wow, this is really crazy that this is part of this movie. So that gives this a little more film history clout than just it's a sequel to Night at the Opera.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember this is before World War II, so like we're way back. So like there was a different feeling going on back then.
And that's the thing too. Like if you say music in Marx Brothers movies, I think of Chico at the piano and Harpo engineering some funny way to get to playing the harp, which is always great. How they have like a comedic device to get him to sit down. It's, it just is.
Oh look, a harp.
Yeah. Well, like it was Day at the Opera where it actually was a piano.
Yeah.
And then through a fight, the piano gets broken down, and he turns the piano inside, and it's a harp.
Yeah.
So...
Which was very clever. I think that's the only time they ever do that in a Marx Brothers movie, where the piano turns into a harp.
So, the film has merit, and it has some things like that. Also, the dancer that's in it, there's like a big night supper benefit, and I think it's Vivian Faye? Fundraiser.
Yeah, Vivian Faye,
Yeah.
F-A-Y.
And she has a legion of ballerina girls that are more or less what you would think of dancer girls back in the day. They're just pretty girls in costume. But Vivian Faye is the real deal. And what's funny is my wife teaches dance once, so I called Christy in the room and said, take a look at this, because I thought it was amazing. And she's like, well, first of all, they sped up the film because of how, how she spies.
Oh, really? Is that sped
it's
up?
all sped up.
Because I was thinking, oh my god, Alien from Outer Space, when she did that spin.
Right, and
like,
when she's doing the pirouettes, like, I'm like, how is this possible? Like, now, dancers, like other performers and athletes and whatnot, are able to do a lot more physically than they were back in the day because of whatever. When she's doing all these pirouettes, you're like, how is this humanly possible? This isn't CG. This isn't, and Christy's noticing that there are cuts and obviously the way it's shot. So, from a dance perspective, this film's very interesting, and I never thought I'd be saying that about a Marx Brothers movie.
No, I totally agree. I thought that was an amazing scene. Yeah. That's one of my favorite parts about that movie, especially when it opens up and you see that big wide shot of the stage and stuff. I remember saying that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I don't know how.
Which makes me worry that they put all the money into that scene, because it seemed like the rest of the film was, I don't know, cheap in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some, like, the horse gag at the race with the mistaken identity and everything else, the jockey switch and all that. The film has merit, and the American Film Institute ranked A Day at the Races the 59th funniest film of all time. So it's
definitely funny.
As many shortcomings as this film has in the Marx Brothers canon, it's still ranked 59 out of all the movies ever made as far as funny movies. Yeah. And I think that says something. And I also think that, like, there's significance to this film.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to say it's still, to me, I didn't even get to see all of A Day at the Races, but from what I saw of it and from everyone that's sort of in it, it just seems like, hey, A Night at the Opera worked.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Yeah.
Same people, same thing, and that never works as well.
Mm-hmm.
It still can be pretty good. I mean, I'm not surprised. Oh, it's the 59th funniest, but it's not going to be as good as The Night at the Opera.
And I wonder how much of it too, having read about that they took the set pieces on the road and toured them and got laughs with them, and they obviously had to make decisions about, well, this scene doesn't work for this movie. We'll save it for the next one. I wonder if almost some of the ones for Day at the Races were cast off.
From Night at the Opera.
Roger Corman, when he did Little Shop of Horrors, him and the crew went off on a vacation trip to the beach, and they had extra film on them and decided to just shoot, I think it was The Beasts of the Haunted Cave. So they just shot it while on vacation on the beach. And I kind of equate this to these two movies too. It's like, they did A Night at the Opera. They had some extra film. They bring Margaret Dumont and Alan Jones and Sig Roman along with them. And they had some extra film, and they did A Day at the Races because it just seemed like A Day at the Races was not well thought out. I don't know, not as good as The Night at the Opera. But it's still funny. I agree. All the scenes they're in, they're funny. Is that the first time in their chronological order of their films that they did the charades thing? Remember the part where he's...
yes, at the charity supper, Harpo's trying to convey information. He was framed.
Yeah.
They're going to frame Hackenbush.
Yeah.
No, the more famous one is in Monkey Business.
Is there one in Monkey Business? I couldn't remember if there was one in Monkey Business.
I would think so. Because the one in Monkey Business is, I think, the one that sort of Lucille Ball spoofed on television with Harpo.
No.
Is that in Monkey
Business? No, that's in Duck Soup, the mirror scene.
That's the mirror scene.
Duck Soup.
That's
Duck Soup, you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
I know they did a couple of charades gigs.
The worst guest.
Have you ever seen these movies?
2 episodes.
I think they do the charades thing like twice in like Love Happy, and I thought it was like something they did later in their act, but I could be wrong. But that's always fun when they do the charades when he's trying to tell Chico something. So she's been framed.
Day at the Races also has some great set pieces. I don't like A Day at the Races, and I agree. Part of that is because, to me, the light of day on the Marx Brothers diminishes their manic activity, whereas like in the dark of the theater and in the hold of the ship, and like they're getting up to all sorts of mischief, and there's something about seeing them in a bright light of day at the racetrack that. I don't know. It just bugs me.
Yeah. Not only did they trim back the musical numbers in the MGM films, but it also seemed like the cinematography and the camera work improved once they came to MGM. There's like a lot of neat shots. There's a really cool shot of Harpo playing the harp, and they do that close up of the strings.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember seeing that, but I thought that was beautiful. And then the thing you were talking about, the dance number. That was shot really nice.
I mean, you got to think too is that like that's what audiences wanted. They wanted music. And I'm sure the studios wanted to sell songs as well. And let's face it, you got Vivian Faye, you got this great dancer, and then you could put 30 to 40 gorgeous women in skimpy dance outfits out there. That's going to help sell tickets. So, they were giving the public what they wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, just kind of see from the other way. If Hackenbush or whatever character Grouch is playing and the rest of the Marx Brothers get their way and get the millions of dollars from the rich people, they will be bad rich people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like it's almost like you don't want that to happen. And I also thought, and to that point, that's one of the weaknesses of Day at the Races is, Groucho's chasing, like all the Marx Brothers, is chasing tail through that whole movie. But at the end, he declares his love for
Margaret Dumont.
And
which is preordained. I mean, that's pretty much how they all ended.
They all have to end that way. And you're sitting there thinking like, well, like this is supposed to wrap it up in a neat bow. Like how can she possibly buy that considering his persona throughout the rest of the...
like I said, I thought it was an excuse to use up the leftover film, leftover from A Night at the Opera. So I'm gonna go a C+ for A Day at the Races.
I won't go that low. I think by virtue of some of a couple of the set pieces, I'd give it a B, which for me is low for a Marx Brothers.
This is actually a harder one to grade. I'm probably gonna go B- because I think it has merit.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree, it's I think it's the weakest out of the films, the recent Marx Brothers films I've seen.
Here is Tootsie Fruitsy ice cream.
Brain Donors basically is a remake of A Night at the Opera and A Day at the Races, starring John Turturro. I'm not quite sure. I don't know the other two comedians, Bob Nelson and Mel Smith.
Bob Nelson was a stand-up out of the, I think, San Francisco area. I'm not
Really?
sure about, and then Mel Smith was a British guy who was kind of ubiquitous back then, although I, for the life of me now, can't think of anything he was in. He's
Me
very,
neither.
very familiar to me, though.
In this one, though, our three guys get involved with a ballet instead of a opera. Mm-hmm. And it's the same deal. There's corruption going on. There's bad guys. John Turturro is in the Groucho Marx role, and he's a much bigger jerk in Brain Donors than what Groucho was, I think. Nancy Marchand, who was in the Margaret Dumont role, who I'm sure you've seen in a number of things. She's like a character actress that's been in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
I tend to wonder if they did it that way because Horse Doctor was too boring for 1992, so they made this guy like he's an ambulance chaser. Yeah, he's an ambulance chaser. He's just a complete
Literally.
creep.
Literally, yeah.
Bob Nelson, he's kind of the Harpo role. He's the quieter one. He does all the weird stuff with his jacket and whatever. There's a scene where he actually pulls out a whole computer and desk and table and stuff, and right out of his jacket and everything. And Mel Smith, he is the Chico role. He's like a cab driver who, as soon as he gets his driver's license, he's going to quit. That was one of the gags. I was impressed that they actually tried to do this. This is like one of those things where most people would scream, "What are you doing? Trying to remake a Marx Brothers movie? That's crazy, blah, blah, blah." And I was impressed that they did it. So we flashed 20 years later, and we're watching it for this podcast, and I was very nervous that I was going to hate this thing. Because I do remember it being a little bit plasticky, kind of. It wasn't as sharp as what I would usually see in a movie like that. It's but I ended up still liking it. I was laughing my ass off. I was really enjoying it. I was really impressed at how funny John Turturro can be. I was laughing very hard. You make me feel like a natural woman.
Like you, I kind of, part of me appreciates the intent behind it, but that's about where it ends.
Is that about it?
I just, I'd much rather somebody try to make a decent screwball comedy than try to, recreate the Marx Brothers or the Three Stooges for that matter.
To try and attempt something that was so big in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, in the 90s, in the 21st century, it's like it seems so out of place. It's such a undertaking.
There's two huge factors, and one of which is the time and era and mindset and mores of the Marx Brothers era, and the other is the Marx Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's not the Marx Brothers. Mm-hmm. It's a guy. They might as well have painted the mustache on him. And
it's funny when it came out in theaters. I think it wasn't even noticed.
I never heard of it.
I never heard of it until a few years later when I found it on VHS.
Yeah. In the little bit of research I did for this, I realized that the gentleman, Mr. Dugan, who directed this, his second film, I believe, has since gone on to make films that have earned $1.5 billion
box office
worldwide. He directed a lot of the Adam Sandler films.
Yes.
Really?
I looked at
see how that could happen.
Yeah, I could. I very much
look
could.
at this comedy and I'm
could.
like, I could see how that would be the stepping stone to Adam Sandler.
I looked at his body of work and I'm thinking this is probably the best he's ever done. Because I cannot stand Adam Sandler. I don't watch a lot of his stuff. And I'm like, this had to be his best.
Well, I happen to have Adam Sandler right here, Phil.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh,
You know nothing of my work.
love your work.
oh is it a surprise? Oh, hi, Adam. How you doing? Welcome aboard.
I mean, I don't want to sit here and defend Adam Sandler movies because I
And Billy
dislike a
Crystal
lot
sitting
of
in the
them.
car outside
Right,
now.
right. It's really
Adam's driver.
Phil Congleton. This is your podcast. Just keep bringing in all these people.
By the way, Mike, before you go any
Yeah.
further, the box office gross for Brain Donors was below $1 million.
I believe that.
$918,000 at the box office.
Adam Sandler movies, whether you love them or hate them, sort of redefined comedy from a period in the mid 90s until like the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because watching Brain Donors, well, one quick thing, you were saying, Pete, that one of the problems with this is it's not the Marx Brothers. I do think that is a huge problem, that like Turturro's your biggest star. Like it would almost be better with like 3 big comedians that were really paying homage. I had said earlier, before this even started, that when I watched this, I thought it was like Brain Donors is like a tribute band,
Right.
playing
The Marx Brothers,
the Marx
yeah.
Brothers. But when you watch this, you really do see some of the sensibilities that Adam Sandler movies turn into, because Adam Sandler movies are just as sort of out there and farcical, which I feel like this is. It is an evolution. So I do feel like if it, as much as a lot of people would probably hate to hear it or say it, the Marx Brothers style of comedy kind of leads into, if you look at the path of things, into Adam Sandler movies and that kind of comedy. It's sort of I don't want to call it dumb comedy, because it's some of it's quick and clever and whatnot, but then there's other stuff that's just a little bit more physical and a little bit sillier, for lack of, rather than dumb, say silly. And I feel like that's the progression that happened. So
I don't know if it's necessarily progression or it's, like the Marx Brothers were a very popular theatrical act.
yes.
Now we're going to make movies with them. Adam Sandler, stand-up comedian, does the SNL thing. Now we're going to make movies with him.
You're right, yeah.
So it's like, it's the same old.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what comedian it is, whether it's, Jerry Lewis or Bob Hope
Right.
or whoever, when they make a movie and there's a formula that goes with them, and there's some things that people want to see them say or do,
Right.
and then it comes out that.
But Adam Sandler, especially Adam Sandler in his movies, is Adam Sandler.
Right.
Exactly.
But so's De Niro. De Niro's De Niro.
Right. Yeah, but De Niro could be Groucho if he wanted.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, Adam Sandler can act if he wants to. Punch Drunk Love and
No,
Spanglish.
I'm not saying he can't act.
Yeah,
I'm just saying like his persona, the way he gets through these films is very much as we came to know him through some television and other things. And that's fine. I have no problem with that. It's just silly to me to take these people, any people, and try to make them be Groucho, Harpo, and Chico so thinly veiled.
Well,
Whereas
I think
why not just make a really good old-fashioned comedy?
Yeah.
And it's funny because, a couple things. I agree with the timing. I think the fact this came out in 92, the timing is just odd.
Yeah.
Watching the movie, I actually thought a couple times, why is this moving so fast? And other parts
76 minutes long.
and other stuff moving slow. Like Turturro's dialogue, like Groucho's, very fast, blah blah, and perhaps it's what they could get away with, whatever. But there are certain lines of dialogue and stuff with the sex humor that I'm like, I'm not going to expose my kids to this. Whereas with the Marx Brothers stuff, it's so antiquated and cleverly written and layered. I felt it was appropriate. Okay, that's just me. That's my thing. I think because the whole evil male dancer who's like going after all the girls, which I think is funny because it's very Baryshnikov. It's like a knockoff of him.
But then again, we said earlier that the Marx Brothers films were pretty racy. And if you adjust for inflation, you have Brain Donors,
Right. They belong in the same galaxy, I guess. Is what I'm trying to say. But also with that, and I was looking through some of your notes. You said how you have all these Marx Brothers movies that obviously is the driving thread, and then there's the cab gag. I think you're saying was a Three Stooges bit. The opening gag with
Bob Nelson.
Thanks. With him setting up his breakfast. That's a riff on, wait for it, a musical American in Paris. There's a whole scene in Gene Kelly where he's in his flat and he opens up this thing and like is literally like this table pops out and the bed goes away.
Yeah.
And
I've seen that in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and like I said, like this is American in Paris.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's cool that this film. I think they had good intentions. You know, we're going to get a lot of gags from older type movies and put it in a 90s frame setting.
Yeah. I'm going to go with a B- because I thought they were bold in trying this out in 1992.
Could you even succeed in trying to do this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you could.
Mm-hmm.
I think you
not
can.
Not with today's audience.
Well,
no
then not knowing how things went this past year, if we turn the clock back a year or so ago, be like, do you think a silent film could win Best Picture in 2012?
Sure, that's
exactly.
a real good argument.
Exactly.
You know? I mean, there's lots of it that I sort of hate, but I actually don't hate it on a whole as much as I probably should. Let's just give it a D. It doesn't fail entirely.
That's fine.
I think I said before, I give them, you know, high marks for the intent behind it. D. It's a D for me.
That's fine.
Couldn't get through it. I was like, I was fidgety watching the first half hour. So I just can't really. And it's a shame because like I Bob Nelson stand up I love. Turturro is great. I mean, he's a great actor. You
I
know,
actually think he's good in this for what it's worth.
He's definitely committed to it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And Mel Smith, I don't mind, but he's neither here nor there in this. You know.
Oh wow, is it my turn?
Yeah. What's your grade?
I think last I checked, D was failing. I give it that because per our conversation we had, I guess in our when we were doing Digging Star Wars, that you can love a bad movie. All right, I didn't love this movie, but I enjoyed watching it. I'd probably watch it again if there was nothing else to do, which never happens for me anymore.
I can think of about 4 million things to do other than try and watch that film again.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it for what it was, but.
Yeah, I was laughing my ass off when
I knew I was in trouble when the claymation titles went on for 20 minutes. You know, I just...
Yeah. I meant to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, I know...
I like those, too.
I mean, the claymation titles are longer than we're talking about.
They are longer. They are a little
cool,
long.
But I don't need to see 5 minutes of claymation titles at the start of your
They
film.
are definitely
claymation
long.
never shows up again.
I was actually fearful. At one point in the movie.
I like the music,
the claymation was going to come back.
Yeah, me too.
I was like, oh, if they do like, was it Annie Hall when he goes to the end? Like that's what I was waiting for them to do with claymation in this. I'm like, please don't do that.
Yeah.
And worst case scenario, I did start watching this at 7:30 at night, and I fell asleep, and so I had to like go back and watch what I missed. Last I remember, this happened, that type of thing. And it's a shame because I like a lot of the players. I think the idea was noble, in air quotes or parentheses.
The reason I brought up Brain Donors is I thought it was interesting that Brain Donors did this 20 years ago and was pretty much a failure. And now they're going to try it again with the Three Stooges, which I'm terrified of this movie. I think it's going to be horrible. I'm really scared that it's not going to be great.
Not nervous or horrified. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to see it, so I'm not
I
worried
think
about
it's going to fail
Yeah,
horribly.
it's going to be horrible.
I don't think...
I'm going to go.
I don't think there's a younger crowd that likes the Three Stooges.
Yeah, and
I just don't think it's a huge box office draw anymore.
I've also been hearing a lot that women don't like the Three Stooges, and I never quite understood that either. It's apparently a guy's thing. So you're already alienating the women and the young crowd. No one's gonna go see this thing.
Well,
except me.
That's the thing. It's like, is the draw because what's their names in it? Snooki. Like, is that like their ace up their sleeve?
I certainly
like what?
I would much rather go see 3 or 4 Stooges shorts on the big screen.
Yeah.
I will say, watching the trailer, that those guys sounded pretty good.
See, that's the main reason why I'm gonna go, because they do sound like they do a really good job. They're really committed to it, and again, it's a bold try. See if this will work, but I'm a little nervous. It's not gonna be that great.
It seems like you look at like SNL now, and mean, what they were doing, what the Marx Brothers were doing was just sort of almost like sketch, musical number, sketch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still our biggest, most cutting edge form of comedy.
That's why these films are so important, because they started pretty much what we do now.
And I think one of the other things going for these films, or these two particular films, is that they have the formula of, these aren't well-educated characters. They're sort of down in your luck, and they're a little shady, but they're trying to help wholesome, good characters off to the side. So it appeals, especially to kids, it appeals like you want to root for these underdogs and go from, you throwing a flag at that?
Going to disagree with you.
But no, I think that's the intent.
Sure.
Like these guys, they're smarter than the educated rich people, but they're trying to help these young upstarts.
From the moment that Groucho appears on screen at the beginning of Night at the Opera, I didn't particularly like him. I wasn't sure why I should root for him.
Mike's very sensitive when it comes to insult comics.
And then even to a lesser extent in Day of the Races, because actually Day of the Races is sort of had the same feel as like the Stooges or Save the Orphanage kind of thing.
Right.
But A Night at the Opera, those characters, there's no reason to root for these guys other than, okay, they're trying to help these other people, but they're doing it in a disrespectful and corrupt sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a hard time even watching A Night at the Opera figuring out exactly why I was rooting for these characters.
Well, Night at the Opera has the jerk singer, right? Where they knock him out and there's a whole gag and stuff like that. And I think they, in that era and I guess whatever writing tools they had available to them and gags and knowledge and movie making and all this other stuff, that they really want to paint that guy as the villain.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that he deserves everything that's coming to him.
Right.
And
but I don't think they did.
Yeah, but I think for the audiences of that day and age, they did.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I like it in the fact that, like, it's not... I hate to knock the Three Stooges, but, like, Three Stooges, a lot of time it just seems like it's just there to be there. Like, they're just going to slap each other or hit each other. They don't have a cause.
Sure.
And I'm not saying you need a cause, but when you have a feature film, it helps... The cause helps. Especially if you're going to string a bunch of skits together.
Yeah.
Like, Tootsie Fruitsie, that seems funny. And it works very well. But there came a point where I'm watching this. I mean, kids are laughing, and I'm watching. I'm like, it's funny, but like, where is this going? Because the money, whoever wins that money, it's going to go to the cause it needs to go to, and I guess that's what makes it charming. But
I guess they're sort of known. Back then, it would be their irreverence, right? So you go to a Marx Brothers film, and that's what you expect them to be. I don't know that people then, or even now, would. I'm not saying your view is wrong, Mike, but it's not what they expect from it. They want to see the stuffing taken out of opera, or highfalutin or things, or people who aren't nice.
To speak what you're talking about, though, I think Groucho's, it's almost like a defense mechanism. It's like his way of being tough with people, because it's like they always have the bad guys that are involved in the story and the plot, and Groucho uses his comedy and his insults as kind of a way to combat against the bad guys,
And to that point, to kind of go back to the whole Bugs Bunny thing, a lot of kids seeing these Marx Brothers movies, this might be their first and only exposure to opera, is seeing it at the Nickelodeon, matinee. Seeing the Marx Brothers movie, which will expose them that. Now, granted, it's disrespectful and playful and having fun, but that's the beauty of films like that. Same with Vivian Faye. How many kids do you think they're, going to see Marx Brothers movies expect to be exposed to ballet? But they are, and that's the charm of it. Yeah, it's kind of stinks that it's at the expense of it to a degree, but in another way, much like the Warner Brothers cartoon stuff, in making fun of it, you're going to hopefully plant a seed that kid might be interested in learning more about it, or years down the road, be like, oh, I've heard this song before because I saw it in this movie. I think there's something that they knew that audiences, and I'm assuming that a lot of them were going to be younger, would root for them. Because they're going to bring a level of insanity and hilarity and hijinks to whatever they enter into, and ideally it all works out for the better because it was crazy.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't destroy it. It helps the situation. And I think Groucho works because he makes fun of everybody, including Harpo and Chico when they're working with him. You know,
I think though you guys bring with you, and I mean it's to be expected, and it's what would have happened for most everybody who saw this movie. But it doesn't work so much if standing by itself. But you guys bring with you sort of an affection for Groucho and what he is and what he does. But just from someone who's watching this movie as his first Marx Brothers movie, as a standalone movie, I'm not waiting for Groucho to do anything because I don't expect anything from him. So, you know, his usual tricks I don't recognize them as anything as a first-time watcher. So it's a lot harder for me to root for him. I bet as I watch more Marx Brothers movies, I would find it easier and easier to sort of root for him because it's Groucho and he's doing his thing. But to me, in one standalone movie, he's just a guy who's a bit of a jerk trying to take money from rich people who aren't particularly evil rich people, you know, or like Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life. Man, he's a rich guy, but he's a bad guy too, and they don't do a good job of painting that. Even Brain Donors did a better job of positioning their opera villain guy as a bad guy than A Night at the Opera did. But like you said, they probably didn't have to do as much of that in that time.
They're probably more well respected now than they were back when they were actually flesh and blood alive doing. The critics hated their stuff. The box office was terrible for them. In fact, another reason why they had to leave and go to MGM was because Duck Soup and Horse Feathers bombed at the box office. They had a string of they had a string of bombs.
Yeah, but that happens a lot throughout film history, in particular in that era. You know, Capra's work, a lot of it wasn't appreciated.
Citizen Kane.
Yeah. I totally agree.
C- for Citizen
We will fight later if you want.
No, that's just
I would defend
flat out
Citizen
crazy.
Kane.
I love Citizen Kane.
Well, let me ask you this, since you seem to know more about Zepp. I mean, I don't know much about him other than what we're just talking about here, but and you said he left to become Uber agent. Was he their agent?
I believe he represented something, but he did become a really high-profile Hollywood agent, very successful. He also was a bit of an inventor. I know he created something, some sort of he had a machine shop or something, and he made a lot of money during the war selling, you know, stuff to the Air Force.
Wow, did not know that. That's cool.
Well, I got to ask Peter something.
Yeah.
All right, so you know, you come in here, you're talking about Night of the Opera.
I was here. You guys came in here
with your fancy clothes and your big city ideas.
I live here.
Well, you and Phil position yourself as
he positioned me.
Marxist.
I am. I do list myself on many websites as a Marxist-Leninist. Leninist. Yeah, all right, so we got what?
Is Night at the Opera your favorite?
No, it's tough. I mean, I kind of really like Horse Feathers.
Horse Feathers is fantastic.
I mean,
really?
I love
That's
Night at the Opera.
One, man. That's a great one.
One of the reasons I love Horse Feathers is because of the song in Horse Feathers is Everyone Says I Love You.
Right.
So, so yeah, Horse Feathers I like a lot.
Guys, thank you very much. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Phil.
It was actually a lot of fun, Phil.
Absolutely.
Cool. I'm glad you had a good time.
Thanks for introducing me.
Pete was
to Marx
beating himself
Brothers.
up too much, though. Pete, you did just fine.
All right.
Next month, the Dying Breed Movie Club and I will compare the 1981 classic Clash of the Titans with its remake that came out in 2010.
Which was awesome.
And hopefully we will have a review of the new sequel to that film, Wrath of the Titans.
Which we saw a commercial for that earlier tonight. That looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I once met Harryhausen.
Really?
I can tell that story on the next podcast.
That's awesome. That's
it's
awesome.
not that good.
Wrath of the Titans comes out on March 30th,
Next
2012.
podcast. I think that's great.
All right, everybody. We'll see you all in the movie aisles.
Billy Crystal said Harryhausen in Monsters Inc.
He did.
That's right.
Creative consultant, Chris Mitch. Technical director, Rich Shoemaker. Special thanks to Andrea DePietro, John Lambiris, and me, Paula Burke. The Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies is produced by Deep Lake Pictures Entertainment and has no connection to any of the movies, artists, or motion picture companies seen or discussed in The Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies whatsoever. Copyrights for films, images, sound bites, trademark characters, and related materials discussed in The Dying Breed Movie Club Meets the Movies remain with their respective owners. All materials are solely used for criticism, discussion, and artistic interpretation based on the fair use laws of the United States.